Welcome everyone to our second virtual mini art video. This is the project we'll be working on today. I sent everyone an email with a list of the supplies that you will need for this project, the exact same colors and materials that I used to make this painting. There are links right in the supply list so you can easily purchase those, or feel free to use some of the colors you have at home, use some of your favorites to add your own personal style to each of your own paintings. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you can post your questions below the video and I'll do my best to answer those as soon as possible. Enjoy, everybody! Alright, so let's get started with our painting. Let's get our supplies ready first. We've got our canvas. It is a 5x7 canvas. I've got just a cup of water for rinsing. I have got my brushes ready. These are the brushes I'll be using throughout this painting. Feel free to use something different if that works better for you, but I've got a nice wide flat brush with a rounded tip. I've got a slightly smaller one, same style though, flat with a round tip, and then a detail brush, so something kind of pointy. I've also got some paper towels close by. I've got my pencil, that way I can get started with that sketch. And most importantly, I've got my paints. All right, so let's go through the paints that I used. Once again, feel free to use some different colors if you'd like. We have got white, lavender sachet, fuchsia, cloudless, English navy, cool blue, wild iris, English ivy green, lime tree, I'm going to jump over here, tropic orange, skip that one. These ones are the two optional colors. This one is splendid gold, this one is white pearl. So you can still make a complete painting without using those two metallic colors, but they do add a little something if you'd like to invest in getting some of those. Alrighty, let's get started. I'm going to find about the halfway point in my canvas, and I'm going to go a little bit lower, and I'm going to make the mountains right up against the skyline. You can put as many as you want. I'm going to do something like that. I recommend doing a nice light line. I'm going to darken this though, that way you all can see. But for your paintings at home, do something a little lighter. There we go. I'm going to do then another layer. So right below it, a second mountain range. So the way I'm thinking of it is we've got the mountain range in the background, then maybe we have some foothills out front. There we go. So they're a little softer. These ones come more to a point. These ones are a little more like rolling hills. There we go. Okay. And that is about it. I'm going to use the rest of my time painting, and we'll fill the rest of the details in with the paint. Let's begin with our larger brush, largest of the three. We're going to use a little bit of white, pink, purple, little bit of orange. Let's get started with a little bit of white, little bit of purple, little bit of pink. Let's kind of mix those all a little bit. I'm going to start towards the bottom. I'm just going to go right against the mountains. Get my sky in there. Just going to use mostly pink, little bit of purple, little bit of white. My recommendation is not to overthink it. Just grab a little bit of each and put it right on the canvas. Okay. I'm going right up to the edge and just blending that nicely so that it's a nice soft pink. Taking a little more purple this time, but similar, just a little bit of each, little white, little purple, little pink but a little more purple. And I'm making sweeping strokes going back and forth across the painting. They're a little bit rounded. As you can see, I'm rounding these strokes a little bit. You don't want to put too much paint on there. There we are. Grabbing a little bit of white, tiny bit of orange in there. Now I'm doing shorter sweeping strokes with this orange, and I'm bringing a little bit down into that purple and into that pink. Now if you have a nice thin coat, it'll just lay right on top of it. If it's too thick, it'll mix, and then we end up with sort of a brownish. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of my pink, and I'm not rinsing my brush between any of this. Just let those colors mix as they want to. And what you can do too is when you have a color you like on that brush, put it wherever you'd like to. So for example, I had some nice pink on there. I'm gonna bring that right up here. I'm gonna go with my darkest pink right up here. So I just grabbed pure pink mixed with just a little bit of whatever is left on my brush. And there we go. All right. And what's kind of fun with making a sky, it comes out a little different each time. There we go. I would like to put maybe a little bit of orange right up there. Just taking a tiny bit of orange, mixing it with a tiny bit of white. Just gonna sweep a couple of strokes right across the top. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'm gonna give this brush a nice rinse. And I'm gonna go ahead and dry that off. Get all of that pink off of there. I'm going to go for that medium-sized brush. So this one also is flat with the rounded. Now I'm going to fill in some of these mountains here. I am now going to use some of these blues. Those are the ones we're going to use for the mountain. I'm going to take my English Navy, and I'm going to go right up to the top of that mountain, and I'm just going to paint right over it, over that line, and I'm using the side of this brush. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use this color, this brush. I'm going to fill in some other areas of this mountain. So these are going to be, you're just going to eyeball it, and these are going to be the darkest parts, the parts that go in. Dark colors make it recede, so once we fill in with a little bit of the lighter colors, those are the parts that are going to come forward. So we're going to create a little bit of depth in doing this. There's not really an exact method to this. What I recommend is just follow this curve to some degree of the mountains. The trick I have found with making the mountains and creating this nice depth is you don't want to overthink it. If you overthink it, it's really easy to make a little bit of a mess. Luckily, acrylic covers very nicely though, so if you find you've made a little bit of a mess, it's easy to fix. There we are. Okay. I'm also going to outline the foothills that I've made here. Just make those dark too. There we are. Okay, great. And this English navy tends to go on fairly light, so I will probably, as we go on towards the end, once I'm filling some details in, I will probably darken some of these areas up. All right, I'm going to give my brush a bit of a rinse and then dry it off thoroughly. I don't like mixing any water with my acrylics. I'm going to go for this medium blue. Okay, so that's the cool blue. I'm going to take that and I'm going to fill in some of these areas here, some of the open areas, and you can overlap a bit, that's fine. And as you can see, I'm leaving some open. And those are the spaces that I'm going to use some of my lightest color in. There we go. Feel free to overlap a little bit on those colors. There we are. So you can see there's not a ton of rhyme or reason to this. There we are. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna get this blue off, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my cloudless in there. And then we're going to move more into this foothills area. Okay. Nice rinse and dry. Little bit of cloudless. I am still using the same brush. This one is working for me, so I'm going to keep going with it. And you'll notice these colors are going to blend a little bit because it's all wet, and that's fine. And anywhere you think it would look nice to put a little bit of that white, or the cloudless, a lighter color, feel free to just do it. So I'm going to stick with this for now. What I will do later is I'll go in here, clean up some of this with a detail brush. I may darken up some areas and also add some thinner lines in there. But for now, I'm going to stick with this. Now, for this area here, I'm only going to go about to here. There will be a little bit of a dip in here, but I'm not going to make foothills all the way down because we want to leave some room to put some flowers in there. Just going to turn this. We are going to use these colors here. So I've got my English ivy green, I've got my lime tree. I'll probably dip into some of my English navy, and I'll definitely use a little bit of my wild iris as well. Same brush, still using this one. I'm taking some English navy, and right below this last navy line here, I'm going to go ahead and put some green. We don't want sharp lines with this. I would focus on making these rounded. So something along these lines. Since these are more hills. There we go. Not rinsing or anything. Just taking a bit of my lime tree, put that in there. like my blending of the colors in here. I'm taking a bit of the navy, English navy. Just going to make this arc that we've got in here. So it's not a very distinct line, not a big separation. There we go. So just enough so you can see it. Okay, there we go. And then with the detail brush, I'm going to go in and put a few more colors. That's where I'll add my purple. But we're just letting this dry a little bit because we want to overlay these colors. We don't want to blend them. Okay. Next, we're going to make some flowers right in here. Now, the way to start this is to do something similar to what we did here. I am going to mix, though, a little bit of white. I'm going to get a little extra white. I'm going to put this white right near my greens because I want to blend it with the greens. Just take that, just mix, just want a little bit of a lighter color. I just mixed both with a little bit of white. And you're going to move your brush in this direction here because the vegetation is growing upward. So we want to create that stroke. Oh, and we're getting some lovely colors in here. I like to not mix too thoroughly. I like to see a little bit of variation in the tone. So I'm going to jump over here. Oh, yes, it's nice and a little bit different over here. I'm going to do this. Right around the edges, I just took some of that pure English navy. Just want to add a little bit of that in there. There we go. Ooh. There we go. Just going to extend these strokes right up to this line here. And I'm just kind of blending that back together. There. Okay. So we have something like this. So you can see we used the same colors, but we did different strokes. There we are. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, rinse this brush. Once I make sure I'm nice and covered here. Okay. Yep, I'm gonna rinse this brush. And I'm going to switch brushes now. We're gonna go for that smaller detail brush now. A nice rinse, dry that right off, and any detail brush will work. I'm not using an extra teeny one. Got something like this, but you can use whatever size works well for you. Now, to make this blend or go together very nicely, I like to bring a couple of these colors up. So I put a couple of highlights of my green in these mountains and a couple of the blue strokes into the foothills. That creates a nice look, a nice balanced look. So I'm going to take a little bit of my ivy, just in a couple of spots, just a couple of strokes, here and there. And I recommend, as you're putting your details in the mountains, as much as you can, straight lines, not rounded. Once we get to the foothills, we'll do more round. There you go. Just adding just a little bit. Take a little of my lime as well. So you don't want to go overboard. Just needs a little bit. I am then going to take a little bit of my navy, and I'm going to go ahead and define this line again. That way it's a really crisp line right against the sky. There we go. Okay, if you'd like, now is a good time to darken up any areas within the mountain that you want to. Some colors go on a little bit lighter, or a little more transparent than others. And this is definitely one of them. It's a very nice color. But it does require 2 coats. There we go. There, as you can see, it's really defining those mountains. And then we'll do the same thing with the other blues. I think my medium blue might be all right, but I think I will probably add a little bit more of the cloudless. And hopefully too, as you do this, you'll be able to see the way the colors work in creating that depth. How these darker areas recede and how the lighter areas come forth. We'll really see that once we brighten up those light areas. Go. Okay. While I've got this color on my brush, I'm just going to add a little bit more to this area here, just sort of separating the foothills from the brush. I don't need this line to be super defined, but I think I'd like a little bit more definition. There we go. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take some of that medium blue. If there's any spots, feel free to add a little bit. On second thought, I guess I will put a little bit more. Just kind of redefine a couple of these corners. Yeah, like right in here. Anywhere that just looks kind of muddy. I feel like this looks nice in these mountains if it's defined, if each stroke is somewhat defined. Blending is always nice, but I want to find a nice balance. There we go. Okay, so that looks fine to me. I'm now going to use some of this color. I'm just going to put a little bit in these foothills. And this is where I'm not defining my lines as much. And I'm also using winding strokes, curved strokes. There we are. So you can see a little bit of definition between the two. I'm gonna just feel inspired to take a little bit more of this light green. I'm just putting it right underneath this blue. And I lined different widths throughout on this part here. I'm going to next take some of that purple. Love adding purple. Okay. I'm just following right below my lime. There we are. Feel free to add it to other places if you want. I'm just going to put just a little bit right on top of this line, separating the foothills from the mountain. Just a little itty bitty amount right on top. It's very subtle. There. Okay. I'm liking this purple, I'm just darkening. Adding plenty of it. Then we'll use some more of this purple in the flowers. There we go. Okay. I am happy with that. Next, I'm going to use that cloudless color. And we'll do something similar. Jumping back to cloudless, I'm going to, right in the mountains, just anywhere I wish. Going to redefine some of those lines. And even add a few. That depth, you can really see it now. So I'm just putting this wherever I'd like to add a little more depth. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to take a little more of my cloudless. I'm going to just put a little bit right below the purple. There we are. Tad bit more here. There we are. Okay. All right. I am happy with that. If you are not happy with what you've made, what you can do is let it dry a little bit, and then this paint layers very nicely. So just let it dry, and then you can go back in and fix anything that you'd like. Just going to redefine this. I just saw something I didn't like, but it was dry, so I can get that in there. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're moving on to the flowers. The first thing I'm I'm going to do is, and this is with your detail brush, I'm going to make a few stems, and I'm going to use my English Navy. I'm going to make a few long stems on this side here. This will show up nicely against that light color. And you want to barely touch that canvas, and you want to go straight up and down. So you want to be perpendicular to, you want the brush to be perpendicular to your canvas. Feel free to do as many as you'd like. I'm going to do a few more, I think, than I did in my original. Got a few stems, looking good. And since the flowers grow from ground up, that's the way I like to do my strokes. There we go. Okay, so that looks all right to me. I'm going to use a little bit of my navy to put a few stems over here. And I'm using the navy over here because I have a little more of that English navy over there in the background, and I'd like to create enough contrast so you can see them. Okay, so that looks all right to me. The rest are going to be ground flowers. Okay, now you're going to want to have your pink, your violet color here, your wild iris rather, and your lavender sachet. You want to have those close by. We've got some white nearby as well. Take what I do for these flowers is I just jump from color to color, and I just make little dabs. And you think like a flower shape, so kind of a rounded shape, but doesn't have to be exactly. I'm not going to rinse my brush at all. I just dipped a little bit into purple. Could be a few flowers on the ground area. And you can see that if you don't rinse the brush and you just leave whatever color is on there, you're going to get a little bit of variation. And feel free to go over some of the flowers once you have a color you like. Just add it to some more of them. There, just dabbing. That is all I am doing. Just dabbing with this brush. That's how you make these flowers. Go. And there's many on the ground around that perhaps have shorter stems or are growing right from the ground. So I'm sort of filling in as I'm doing this with that as well. And you can fill in as many as you want. If you like seeing more background, you can leave that, or you can fill in until you almost can't see the background if you like doing lots of flowers. Feel free to add other colors too if you want to. I'm going to take a bit of white. I'm going to add just a little bit of plain white just to create a little bit more contrast within these flowers. Now, if you're interested in adding some of those metallic colors, I am now going to take a bit of that gold and I'm going to do the same thing, just right among the flowers here, just dotting with some dabs. Could also add other colors, other flower colors in here if you wanted to. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of my orange. And I just mixed a little bit of that with this gold color. Just a couple of these. I think that kind of ties the sky and the flowers together. There we go. And do as much as you'd like. I think I'm happy with that. I like the way that came out. I'm going to give this brush a rinse. Dry that off. Last but not least, I'm going to jump back to the sky. I'm going to use this white pearl. Just going to take some of that and in some of these lighter areas in the sky, right between here, I'm just sweeping this right in. And then a little bit under here. There. Just gives it a little something. Okay? And that is it. Feel free to add any other colors you'd like. You can add a little bit more detail. But that is the gist of it. If you have any questions, feel free to post those right under the video, or you can send me an email. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed painting with me. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again next month.